I believe that the fires we're cast upon on the flames we shall become. I believe in a common calling where our temples pray as one. I believe in the word of wonder and a kingdom for the saved.
This is Larry Pollock, Carroll, coming to you from the Underground Performance Gym podcast. Today we're going to talk about coaching, specifically at the elite level. And we're going to talk about a recent topic that's come up. Recently, Haney Rambod, who's been known as the pro creator and considered one of the best, if not the best, bodybuilding coach in history so far, having won the most Olympia titles of any bodybuilding coach combined. And he recently announced his retirement as a coach. He wanted to spend more time with his family and business ventures and things like this. So his two top athletes were Hany Rambod and Derrick Lunsford, who were both recent Olympia winners. Hany winning in 2022 and Derrick winning in 2023. And then Hany took second 2024 and Derrick third in 2024. So both those guys were left speculating on who was going to be their coaches and what was going to happen with them. And Derrick recently announced that he's going with Chris Aceto, who is considered one of the top coaches in bodybuilding, having many years of experience and lots of pro title wins, including some Olympia wins. He prepped Jay Cutler for some of his Olympia wins, Shawn Ray for his Olympia win, many others. So he's considered one of the I'd say out of the 5 top coaches in bodybuilding history, he's definitely in the top 5. Meanwhile, Shawn Ray, he's a former runner-up, 2-time runner-up in the Olympia, and came from a different era. Back when I started, actually, I competed with Shawn when we were young, and he had a record for competing, I think it was 13 Olympias, and taking top 5 in the Olympias, all 13 times. So he's considered one of the elite bodybuilders of all time as far as competition goes. And Shawn never used a coach. Aside from John Brown, who was his coach in the very beginning when he started as a teenager, Shawn did all his own preps, his own training and everything, as did most of us back in those days, because prep coaches were kind of a new thing. It really didn't start until Chad Nichols in the 90s started prepping these top Olympia guys. But prior to that, I mean, there wasn't that title of prep coach, really. Everybody did their own thing. And I had a coach when I was 16 years old. A guy named Mike Sable was a Mr. Universe. He prepped me for my first contest. But after that, I sort of did my own preps. When I say sort of, I was training with top professional bodybuilders. Mike Menser was my roommate for a year. So he wasn't officially my coach, but I lived with him and I trained with him, and he told me what to take, which is what he was taking.
You could kind of say he was coaching. I mean, he was quite a bit older than you. You were in your teens.
He was definitely my coach, but when I say I didn't check in with him I trained with him, so he was probably more of a coach than these coaches now, because I actually live with the guy.
Yeah. Did you guys pose together and stuff?
No. I learned all my posing from Mike Sable, and then originally I learned my first posing routine from Mike Sable when I was 16. And believe it or not, I practiced my own posing copying Shawn Ray, because he was just a great poser. So I just would watch Shawn Ray videos, and I'd kind of try to do what Shawn did, even though I was built a little bit different, and I'd watch the top.
He was very graceful. Yeah.
He was a really good poser.
Did you ever this is kind of off to the side. Did you ever compete when you were living with Mike Menser?
I competed that year in the Teen America.
Okay, but you were actually like roommates with him when you like competed, or did you like stop living with him and then?
I think I stopped living with him like right before I went there.
Yeah. So maybe you were prepping.
Yeah.
Living with him.
But that year I was actually I got a lot bigger living with him. Mm-hmm. But I came in bigger than I did the year before. Doing the high intensity, heavy duty training style and stuff, but I wasn't quite conditioned as I should have been. Mm-hmm. And I think it was just that I wasn't doing as much cardio maybe. And also I had developed Crohn's literally right after that show. So that had something to do with it, but I was really big. I was conditioned. I was really big at that show.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, so I'll let you finish about talking about Chris and Derrick and Shawn.
So yeah, anyways, Shawn basically on a recent podcast, first of all, it was announced, Derrick announced that Chris Aceto was going to be his coach going into forward to at least this Arnold Classic and maybe the Olympia. And I personally thought that was a good decision. If I was Derrick and I had to pick a coach, I think Aceto would be the one I would pick because he has the most experience of probably any prep coach. I mean, Hany might have more Olympia wins, but Aceto's been doing this. He started back when I did, and he was coaching back in like when I was competing.
Yeah, he had an office in Gold's Venice, and then he was coaching like pretty much all those guys. He was writing them diet programs and stuff.
Yeah.
In the what was that? The early 90s.
Early 90s. Yeah.
So he's got Chris. I think what Chris definitely has. I read his book. He has his knowledge, but he has experience. I mean, anyone can have knowledge, but he just has decades and decades of experience, and he has with that he has like a certain kind of eye for if somebody's looking flat, if somebody's looking fatigued, if somebody's looking wet, whatever they're looking, he has a certain kind of eye for that, and he can kind of push and pull.
Not only that, he has the experience with the knowledge. And what I mean by that is, like, I have the same thing, and I'm not saying I'm as good as Chris, but what I'm saying is, like, I can look at somebody and I can tell, how the drugs are affecting them by the look of their physique and how it's changing. I can tell how their diet's affecting them. I can tell how the training is affecting them. And when I say I can see it on a daily or weekly basis, I can see how the changes, positive or negative, because I've seen it so many times on myself and other people.
Yeah, that comes down to that just experience factor.
Yeah, and you can't, that's not something you can learn in a book. Mm-hmm. You just, after training people for years and years and years and training yourself for years and years and years, and you just see how, I can almost look at somebody and tell you like how they train, what sort of drugs they're taking.
Yeah, there's definitely like
there's different
artifacts
looks.
Of different looks of what you can say of what they're probably taking or how they're possibly training. Well, we have a little clip here where Shawn and Bob Chickarill are talking about it on Bob's podcast. You wanted to cue up a little bit because he kind of talks about Chris a little bit, and we just wanted to get into that.
Yeah, so Shawn basically is of the thought that bodybuilders should prep themselves, and you should have the learn it yourself and learn like we did back in the day, because like I said, we didn't have prep coaches. They shouldn't be relying on prep coaches. They should be able to do their own training, do their own nutrition and everything else, and not necessarily rely on a coach.
Let's run this, and then we'll get into that topic that you just went on. So, all right, here's a little clip. It's a couple seconds early from what we want to get to, but he's talking about Derrick, and then he goes into talking about Chris. So here it is.
Probably exactly what each of them needed. Derrick needs those type of workouts throughout the year, And if I were him, I'd be like, look, I know how to do the protocols. I worked with Hany and we got all that crap down. Bring me somebody that's going to take me to the next level. Someone that's going to challenge me in the gym. Aceto hasn't been in the gym. Aceto hasn't been underneath the bar. Aceto's not training with these athletes. This is an experiment that could go really good or could go really bad. And if it goes really bad, we're going to be sitting here, 11 months from now, looking at each other, going, "Well, he did this to himself because he certainly didn't have to bring this element into his camp."
Well, I'm going to.
All right, let's cut it off there. Those are some strong words towards Chris Aceto because Chris he was a good bodybuilder too. I mean, he was a champion bodybuilder.
So I want to comment a little bit on what Shawn just said. Chris was a good bodybuilder way back in the day himself. And it's true he stopped training and competing like decades ago. He hasn't been in the gym himself training or under heavy bars or doing it himself. But Chris never stopped coaching people. Mm-hmm. So like I could say I've been training for the last 40 years myself, so I experimented on myself, but he's experimented on other people, and I think he's got like 43 pro wins or something like this. So he's, all these years, he's prepped a lot of different people and monitored their diets and their training. And, you don't have to physically, at some point in your career, you do have to train to understand training. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to, like right now, okay, I stopped deadlifting 2 years ago because I just have a thing in my lower back that every time I deadlift, it flares up. So I just do other back exercises. Yeah. I can still teach somebody how to deadlift. I didn't forget like how the form is.
Yeah. So I think that's just, I mean, I don't know why Shawn is saying that about Chris. Chris definitely has the experience. He's been in the gym. He's gone the distance. He's competed, and he's and he's coached some of the greatest guys. I mean, Jay Cutler, Shawn Roden. I mean, both Olympia winners, and I think
Jose Raymond.
Yeah, I think that it's just short-sighted to think that he doesn't have, something to be a coach. And then I guess we can talk a little bit about what Shawn is saying, that these guys shouldn't have coaches, don't need coaches. I mean, I commend Shawn. Like you said, he competed. He did 13 top fives, Olympias without a coach. But I mean, maybe he would have won the Olympia with a coach, I mean, it's hard to say because I think with a coach, pro bodybuilders are just taking their knowledge and then adding to it. Whenever I've worked with several coaches over the years, training coaches, nutrition and diet coaches, and run my gear protocols. And every time I learn from a coach, each coach kind of has a different, definitely these guru coaches have a different kind of like way they do a peak, or way they do a cycle, or way they do the whatever. And I learn, I take what, they are doing to me, and I just keep that knowledge, I mean, some guys probably just let it flow through their head, but I mean, I think that's one benefit. I'm sure, Derrick is a very smart guy. He's had, I forget what the first coach name was, like George. Somebody his when he won the.
I know who you're talking about. I can't.
I don't know his name, but then going with Hany. I mean, sure he learned a lot of new techniques from Hany, and I'm sure he learned a lot of new stuff from Chris, and he'll probably tell Chris, hey, this is what I've done in the past. I also think it's a little short-sighted for Shawn to say that he says, oh, you have the gear program, now you just run it. I mean, is every prep going to be exactly the same? Do your hormones not change? Does your dieting style not change? Do you try different stuff to see if you get a better peak, to get a better water drop, diuretic, like all the, whatever it is?
I want to address that. So, I did my first show when I was 16, and I competed for till I was 19 as a teenager, and then I went away to prison, and then I started back competing at about 27. And I remember, I mean, I did a lot of competitions. Even between 16 and 19, I probably did 15, 20 competitions because I just, if there was a show, I'd go do it. That's back then. It was like we didn't think about like off season, and I just wanted to compete wherever I could compete.
Yeah.
So I would compete several times a year actually. And you know, I did well, but some shows were better than other shows. Some looks were better than other looks. And I remember I competed 3 times in 1 year. I think it was 2004. Yeah, it was 2004. I did the cow, and I severely over dieted and over cardioed, and I came all the way down to light heavyweight and competed at like 196.
Is that when Nasser coached you?
No,
Oh, okay.
I was doing it myself. I came down like 196, very flat, just too light for my frame. I didn't look good. Then I competed 3 months later at the Nationals, and I was 215, and way better look, much fuller, more vascular and everything. And I think I took top 10 at that Nationals. And then the last show of that year was in December. I think that was 3 months after the Nationals or USA's, whichever one it was. And I did the Excalibur, which was the last show of the year. And I came in right at 225, exactly 225 at the top of the heavyweights. And that was my best look ever. So what happened was I started out probably at like 235, dieted myself down to 196, and then grew in each prep into the show. And I remember after doing that, and I just nailed it perfectly. My conditioning, my fullness, I was biggest I've ever been on stage. And I called my old coach, Mike Sable, who had coached me 20 years earlier. And I'm like, I figured it out. I nailed it. I know the formula. I got it down. And he could give a shit. He was like, whatever the fuck you're talking about. But I was excited because, that was like my best look.
Yeah.
And so even on myself, I looked like 3 different bodybuilders in that year. Like completely different people.
But you ran different peaks and stuff through
No,
that.
I just the first one I over dieted, over cardioed, over whatever, and then grew back into the Nationals, and then I kept growing back to where I should have been, 225 to begin with. I should have never, at 235, I was lean already, so I should have never gone down below 225. So I just grew into each show, and then when I say grew, I mean I just regained my muscle back.
You must have been like emaciated if you dropped from 235, pretty lean, down to 195.
That's where I would say, and I'd already been competing for a long time, but that's where I say I wish I would have had a coach to tell me to put the brakes on, because I'm the person that, I got to get more
harder.
shredded. I got to be like shredded. My eyeballs have to be shredded.
Yeah.
And so like I'm going to do extra cardio, extra diet, extra hard, do something more different.
Yeah, what you're hitting on right there might be like the best thing for a top level guy once they're, because in some ways Shawn is right. A lot of the top level guys, they've been bodybuilding for probably 10, 15 years before they even started with a coach. And then, now they're top guys and they have the money to maybe work with a coach. And I think that maybe now, they're working with them just to say, have a second set of eyes that they really trust, somebody that's got the experience like a Chris Aceto. You don't want to just, some guys, I mean, like Samson, I guess, it says, hey, his wife's looking at him. Hey, honey, how do I look? But I mean, a lot of times the people around you, they might just be telling you, you look great. I mean, you do look great compared to a fucking normal person.
Right.
I mean, and they're saying, man, you look the best you've ever looked. But then you need someone that's really going to be hard on you and be like, yeah, you do look great, but you don't look as good as Hany Shupin. You know, I mean, that might be what you need.
I just talked to a training client that I prepped last year. He did really well in shows, came conditioned and everything, but he's a Masters competitor, and he's dead set on competing in the Open USAs this year.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, dude, I'm going to tell you the truth. If you want to compete in the Open, that's fine. Do it for shits and giggles. But the odds of you winning are like slim to none.
Going from a Masters to the Open. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, you got Masters Nationals 1 week before that. I said, you can go there and you have a really good shot. I could say you got a really good shot of winning and getting a pro card. But you're going to go in the Open as a heavyweight, and you're just not big enough. I'm not trying to hurt his feelings or anything. I'm just telling the truth, because
that honesty is what people need, because people don't need you to say, yeah, you're going to do great, you're going to look great, and then they get third call out. You know, they don't need that. They need a honest person. You're not trying to be mean. You're not trying to cut them down. You're just saying, hey, this is the reality of the situation. If you're competing, this is what you're looking at. You know, I've seen the guys at that level.
He's competed last year. He weighed in like 204. And I think
so he'll be on the bottom end of the
I think at this year he can probably compete maybe 207 to 210 if we put on a little muscle this offseason. And there's just guys in there that are going to be 3 inches shorter than him and 15 pounds heavier muscle-wise. So they're going to make, it's just not big enough to win the heavyweight at the Open USA.
Yeah.
If
if he wants to take it as a challenge and try to use it as motivation, then yeah, that's great. But you as a coach have kind of told him, hey,
and I learned
this might not be the best class for you. I'm not going to take one of my clients that's a men's physique guy and say, yeah, jump into Open because you look great. I mean, I'm going to say, look, you're a men's physique guy. Let's get in where you fit in.
And I've learned this because I brought lots of people to the Nationals. I remember one year I brought a guy, he was a middleweight. I mean, he looked huge as a middleweight. The guy was like ripped, big, everything. And night before the USA's, we're getting ready to leave to Vegas, and he's like, I need to be a bantamweight. I'm like, what? You're a middleweight and you're already ripped. Like, what do you mean? Why do you need to be a bantamweight? I don't know. He just got in his head.
Yeah.
And I was so pumped up on him because I thought he looked so great. But he dropped, 10, 15 pounds just on the drive to Vegas.
And looked stringy.
No, he didn't. He actually looked good, but he would have been better as a middleweight. And he ended up taking top 5 in the bantamweight, despite like he got all in his head and everything. But he didn't win, and he had it in his head that he was going to go there and win his first nationals, which is hardly anybody wins their first national level show. Most of the guys go 3 or 4 times before they actually get the pro card there at the Open.
I got it my second time, but I mean, I didn't compete. Usually guys compete a lot going up. I competed when I was like my first year in, and then I competed at like 10 years in, and then I was like ready to turn pro almost, Right. But even at that level, I still had to try it twice because I didn't really know how to diet. And then I started working with a coach, is what we're talking about. I started working with Phil Viz, and Phil got me peeled. And then I went in and, won it handily. I had the muscle the year before, but I just didn't know how to get down like that.
Right. Yeah. So I'd rather be like, I'd rather over deliver and under promise than hype somebody up saying, oh, you're going to win. And then they, like he said, get 5th place, and he feels like he failed.
Yeah. What are some other benefits you think that at that Olympia top 5 level a guy could get from a Chris Aceto or from a...
Well, at any level, I mean, first of all, even a beginner in the gym, them especially should have a coach because they don't even know how to lift weights. At least someone to teach them how to train. Absolutely. At any level of competition. Now, let me back up on this. There are some really shit coaches out there. I'm just going to say that straight out. I have a kid came to me recently. I just talked about this, that he's only been training for 2 years. Some guy won his first show. He won a local show. The guy's already a prep coach, and the guy put him on 2 grams of gear on his second cycle ever. And the guy has no muscle.
That's more than I take.
Yeah.
Like literally what I take right now, I've been cycling since I was 24 years old. I'm about to turn 40. I'm up to 2 grams. Like that's a heavy cycle for me. So somebody that is like a newbie that has no fucking muscle to put on 2 grams, that's irresponsible.
His blood work was
irresponsible.
Anyways, the guy came to me. I'm like, dude, you just got to get off everything and just clean out.
And it was 2 grams with Tren. I'm on 2 grams, but I'm on test and primo.
Yeah, a gram of test, 700 Tren, and an anadrol every day. So 350 milligrams of anadrol.
I mean, in theory, he should have been putting on a pound a minute of muscle, but like, you know, it just doesn't work that way. You got to put in the time of consistency and like time. It isn't just a steroid equation. It isn't just how much milligrams can you take of Tren, how much milligrams. I mean, I can't imagine his side effects. His sleep must have been trash.
Everything was
his blood work. His
lipids and triglycerides
was terrible.
Were really high. His hemoglobin really high, and this kid's 24 years old.
Mm-hmm. He shouldn't be at all.
Yeah, and so like, there's some, like I said, there's some coaches they shouldn't. I don't know. There should be some kind of exam that somebody has to take to even claim to be a coach, because some people they're not qualified to do that.
I think that comes down to just the client interviewing the coach, saying, "What's your style? Like, you know, what kind of cycles do you like to do? What's your average milligrams that you put on a guy that's been 1 year, 2 years?" I mean, maybe just asking kind of questions like that, because I have no problem showing people, hey, this is the logbook that I use. Here it is. Here's an existing client, or here's like a template. You can look at it, because like, I mean, at the end of the day, that knowledge of just giving them that, if they want to somehow, you know, you go take that and use it and just whatever and think that they're getting coached, you're not. I mean, the difference between actually just buying like a program and getting coached is like, you're going to be sending me videos. I'm going to say, all right, your effort is too low here. Oh, your legs, you're not really activating your quads because your legs, you're squatting, but you're squatting for like adductors and glutes. You're not squatting for, you know, just like kind of examples, stuff like that. So I have no issue. I'm sure you have no issue telling people, giving like a full interview about how you should coach. And so that's kind of like it's just on the client to really search out good coaches, maybe talk to, you know, friends of yours if it's a good coach, what kind of style they have, how quick they are in check-ins and stuff like that.
Now, this is something that I sort of agree with Shawn on, and I think bodybuilders should put some effort into learning their own body, learning, you know, how they respond to different nutrition, different training, different drug cycles. They should have a basic understanding of like what they're doing. And
I agree, but I also think that with being able to hire a coach, you can stand on the shoulders of somebody that did the wrong stuff a lot of times.
Yeah, but here's what I see. Okay. I mentioned this to you yesterday. I had a training client that he never could peak for a contest. A friend of mine is a judge. I told him I was training him for shows, and he's like, that guy never comes in shape. I got him in great shape. He took top 10 at nationals. He did everything that I told him. I worked the hell out of him. He followed everything I said to a T. And then the following year, he didn't compete. And then he decided to try to compete with somebody else. And he looked like absolute crap. Mm-hmm. So obviously, like, everything that I did with him, he didn't learn.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't learn anything from what I saw. Like, he learned.
Well, I think that just comes down to if some people want to learn, and then some people just have a pocket full of money and want to pay someone to train them. I mean, I guess that's the difference.
Yeah, but I think you can't. If you're going to be successful in bodybuilding,
you need to know a lot. Yeah.
You need to know
your body,
your stuff.
Yeah.
I prefer a client gives me feedback when I ask them questions about their training, their nutrition, how are you feeling today? I want feedback from someone with some knowledge.
They can tell you specifically what,
like
how they're feeling,
how their
how their
workout
sleep
went,
is,
everything, how they're feeling.
Well, I mean, I talked to tons and tons of other pro bodybuilders, and all of them know a lot. I mean, a lot of them have coaches. Some of them don't. A lot of them have coaches. But I mean, we get into really technical shit. We're talking about technical training protocols, even lifts. We're talking about technical cycles. It's not just like, bodybuilders are very physiologically.
Some.
A lot of the top, I'm talking about top guys,
Right.
guys that are pros, guys that actually compete. I mean, when I talk to Martin and Brett and Derrick and, all these guys know a lot about lifting, about building muscle, about getting lean, about drugs, about, all these things. They all know a lot about it. So they're all paying attention. And I think that they're all working with coaches, but they're all using the coach's knowledge and even giving the coach back. Hey, when I started working with Phil, I kind of was just a good soldier the first year, and we did get my pro card. But then after that, I looked and I said, hey, these things I don't need. I don't need this, like to push this hard, because I actually, my genetics allow for like not doing that. And he had to do it with a lot of his other clients. And I just said, I don't need to do that in the future. So, we don't do those things. And that's kind of just like you giving the coach feedback, like you're saying.
Yeah. And then the coach, again, is there for the experience to like, okay, I see your body's responding in a certain way to whatever we're doing, and we either need to push harder, pull back, whatever needs to be done, or do nothing at all. Like the one client that I trained last year, the Masters competitor, I did his diet at the beginning of the prep, and honestly, I didn't change anything until the last 2 weeks because I didn't need to.
He was coming down the whole time.
Every week he'd check in, and every week he dropped 1 pound, and he was getting stronger.
Yeah.
He was getting stronger in the gym, which lets me know that he wasn't losing any muscle. And every week he was losing 1 pound, and he was looking leaner.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't need to change anything. What he was doing was working. We didn't add cardio or anything. I think the last 2 weeks I changed up a little bit just for fine tuning, but not much. We kind of just cruised into that, but we gave ourselves plenty of time for the prep, and he just cruised into the show, came in with shredded glutes and the whole everything. So we didn't need to change anything, but I dialed it in the very beginning, and it just worked.
Do we know any, can you think of any bodybuilders, Olympia guys that don't compete with a coach?
Now, today?
None.
No.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to have a coach.
So maybe Shawn just has like a back in my day kind of attitude, like we did it better because we did it on our own. We did it as Spartans, but now the technology, the internet exists, and we're able to communicate over long distances, videos in real time, stuff like that. So we built bigger physiques. I mean, arguably the genetics were better back then, but I don't think that the work ethic or the drugs were any different. I think that we just had a really all-star team of Levrone, Flex, Ray,
I will
Dorian.
disagree on that.
What do you think is different?
The training. Everybody at the top level. You had a situation back then where most of the top guys were training in the same gym because everybody was under a Weider contract.
I think that they pushed each other to better.
I would go into World Gym on any day, and there'd be 20 pros in there training for competition, and probably everybody who was getting ready for the Olympia would be in the same, either golds or worlds, under the same roof, watching each other train. Mm-hmm. And you can't get more motivated than that. So you'd see like Tom Platz kicking ass over here at golds, and Samir kicking ass over here, and Lee Haney kicking ass over here at Gasperi at Worlds.
Everyone's getting motivated to get bigger, get leaner.
And, you're going to be on stage with that guy, or you're trying to be like those guys, and you're in the same gym training. So the energy was another level, and you're training at another level because, look, the first person I ever saw train pro bodybuilder was Bertil Fox, and he trained like a fucking freaking
monster.
animal.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have known what that looked like if I didn't stand there and witness it.
Well, I mean, I've trained with all these guys. I've trained with Brett and Martin and I mean, I can't even think of all.
But you, as
all
a
the
pro
pros.
bodybuilder, have had the opportunity to travel a little bit and be trained with
but
different pro bodybuilders.
I don't think. I think. Let me finish. What I'm getting at is, I don't think that the intensity. I don't think that the how do I say it? The desire to train hard or the knowledge to train hard is really any different. But I do think you're right. If you're in the gym and you're seeing Mike Christian and he's over there squatting, and you're seeing Gaspari and he's over there benching, and you're seeing, all these guys, like, yeah, you're probably going to be pretty fucking motivated to like train even harder. There's kind of not really like a mecca right now. Maybe like the powerhouse out in Bev Francis powerhouse. There's a lot of pros that do there, but I mean, I just don't think that that mecca really exists right now.
Yeah, and I mean, like, okay,
I agree with you. That is something that's different.
I just don't see. I see amongst a few of the top guys training really hard, but in I used to go to Gold's in the 2000s when I was getting ready for shows. I'd go down there to train. On not most of the time, but sometimes just for the motivation. And I remember being in there, and Charles Glass would be in there training his clients, and Charles and his clients would stop and watch me train. And I'm thinking, I'm just nobody. I'm just a freaking, like, I'm not famous or anything, but they're watching me train because I'm the only person in this gym training hard, and they're going through the motions. Because people.
What year was that? In 2000s?
Early middle 2000s. Just no one was training hard anymore. And in the 90s and 80s.
Well, I think Gold has fallen off. Gold's.
Yeah, but I'm saying the 90s and 80s, everybody was training hard.
Yeah.
And then here's Charles putting his people through a workout, but they stopped. They're stopping there just watching me train. And
you're getting a little older now, but I mean, I saw you train. I've been training around you for 10 years. 10 years ago, you were training pretty damn hard. I mean, you were hitting, we were strapping down as much weight as that flex leg press would hold, and I'm holding you in while you're leg pressing 1100 for reps on a drop set. So I've seen you train. You're kind of a maniac the way you train hard.
But
like
I've always trained like that, and I remember because I learned from guys that trained like that in the 80s, and people continue to train like that. I wasn't like I learned.
I think some guys definitely do. I think a lot of the guys that really get, like Martin Fitzwater, he trains like an animal. Like him and Brett are a special thing together because he just trains like a complete animal, and Brett does too. And I actually think that's
why he's where he is.
Definitely why he is where he is. But I was going to say about I think jumping over to Derrick for a second. I think what happened to Derrick this year is the Olympia pushed him too much to travel. Like he was traveling 1 to 2 weeks out of every single month. And it was several days at a time, going over to Germany, going over to Mexico, all around the United States, Arnold, this and that. I mean, I think that he just got fatigued, and, because I was, when I was owning Iron Rebel at the time, he was one of our athletes, and, we'd try to set up maybe a photo shoot. Oh, I'm getting back, and he's feeling run down. He'd catch a little, cold or flu or corona or something here or there. And I think that years prior, before he was Mr. Olympia, I think he was home sleeping, 8, 9, 10 hours a night, eating every meal, doing turning every stone, So I think that, I think that's what happened to him. I don't necessarily think it's anything other than just the amount of stuff. There's probably
some truth to that, but both him and Hany were off at this last Olympia.
What do you mean?
They were both off. They were both downsized a little bit and flat.
I mean,
And
maybe Hady's getting up there in age a little bit. I mean, I think the same age as me, so he's 39.
nah, but he
38.
just did the Arnold earlier in the year, and
he looked good.
Freaking, he won.
Yeah.
He beat Sampson. He looked. If he came in with that Arnold look at the Olympia, he would have won. No doubt.
I mean, I don't really know the inside of Hady, so I can't say with Hady.
Just what he looked like at that Arnold demolished Sampson. Mm-hmm. Sampson looked the same at the Olympia, maybe 0.5% better.
Mm-hmm. But it was enough because
because Hady and Derrick weren't at their 100%. Mm-hmm. Hady and Derrick at their 100% beat Sampson. Mm-hmm. No one saw Sampson winning this last Olympia until he did. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody really thought that he was going to beat those two, but they both came in off. So I don't know exactly what happened, but both of them.
Do you think that comes down to
both of them were flat and their legs were downsized?
Do you think that comes down to Hany doing something wrong?
I think this is just speculation. I can't be 100% for sure, but when you lose your legs, the number one thing is over cardioing. And I think maybe those guys, maybe he decided they're going to come in like more peeled than peeled, which
yeah,
both of those guys
both
of those guys were peeled out of their minds. Like Derrick at the previous Olympia, and I mean there was nothing else left to lose.
Yeah,
and Hady at the Arnold, he was as peeled as you could get. So once you're at that point where there's no fat to come off, and you just keep trying to get more peeled, you're just going to lose muscle and glycogen. Mm-hmm. And the number one way to do that is over cardioing and over dieting.
Is Hady working with a new coach? Do you know?
That we don't know.
Okay. Is Hady doing the Arnold?
He's not.
Derrick is doing the Arnold though, right?
Derrick is doing the Arnold.
Okay. I'm out of the loop. I've been off Instagram and stuff for 2 months, so I'm totally out of the loop.
Hady, we don't know who Hady's coach is going to be, but
okay.
Hany said himself that like Derrick and Hady are like completely different people when it comes to that.
To dieting.
No. It comes to everything because
drugs and
Derrick is young, and he's always had a coach, and he's not as experienced in training as Hady is. Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, Hady, when he burst onto the scene, and technically should have beat Flex Lewis at that first pro show that he ever did, because he looked amazing, and no one knew who he was. He was already a freak, and he did that himself with no coach.
That must have been probably about like 2017 or 18. So that we're looking at almost 10 years ago. I mean, so Hady was maybe 27, 26.
Was it 2019 when he did his first Olympia?
I think so. But but he had been trying, I think, for 2 years to get into the United States at that point.
Yeah, but I think he did that show against Flex Lewis. Like,
are you talking about was it Korea or was it?
Korea.
Yeah, I think it was Korea.
So wasn't that the same year, earlier in the year? And then he went to the Olympia?
I don't know. Maybe it was 2018 or 2019.
It was 2018 or 2019. But
yeah.
I
mean, that's 6 years ago. I mean, I think he's 37. So that would have been 37 or 38. So he would have been 31 or 32 years old. So you start getting into those later years in your 30s. I mean, you start to maybe drop off a little bit.
Well, I'm not saying that. It's he basically trained himself up to that level. Mm-hmm. He didn't really have coach.
Yeah.
Going into, I thought he could have won his first Olympia in 2019. He looked freaking amazing. He wasn't the biggest guy on stage, but he was far more peeled than anybody up there. Mm-hmm. And he just looked, to me,
I think he was a Martin Fitzwater that year. Like he was just the new guy on the block, and he was peeled, and he was like, he got a first call out, and he was like, holy crap, who's this guy? But they were just like, we can't give it to him because he's a new guy.
He's a new guy, and we don't know who he is.
Yeah,
and but he was, to me, he looked the best of anybody at 2019 Olympia, and so most of his career, I don't know if he had a coach in Iran. But I think he probably did most of that himself.
Yeah.
So he's coming from a different place. Like he probably is a guy that can prep and train himself for the most part because he did most of his prep and training throughout his training life himself.
I tend to believe you that he didn't have a coach because he's been putting all that freaking oil in his tricep or in his shoulder, and that one shoulder looks like a freaking triangle. If he had a coach, if I was coaching him, I would have told him, "Hey, go somewhere else. Don't shoot there ever again."
Right. But I'm saying, like, prior to Haney Rambod, he was already, like, practically there.
Yeah.
You know, he made, like, small improvements, but, I mean, from his 2019 Olympia to the one he won, there wasn't that big of a difference.
Hany's biggest contribution to him was getting him into the United States.
Yeah.
That's Hany's biggest contribution to Hany.
So there's a guy that, like, he's old school, you know, probably did most of his prep himself. I'm sure Hany, like, gave him tips here and there and maybe something, but he knew how to train. He doesn't need someone pushing him.
Yeah. I have a feeling that Hany's a high dosage guy. I think he's running pretty high dosages. Just because he's a couple years younger than me and he looks a decade older than me.
I would say like this, okay? People from there have a totally different mentality about everything.
Do anything to win.
Anything. Because think of it. They grew up in poverty. Life and death is fleeting over there. Like they're growing up in war. People are, getting killed all the time all around them. And for them to be a champion and maybe risk their health taking more gear.
Fuck it.
Like what's my whole village just got blasted to shit the day before. So like, I'm not scared of a freaking steroid.
Yeah.
It's just a different mentality. And their work ethic is different too, because it's like,
I mean,
I know when I was training in prison, I trained hard in prison and there was no competition going on, but I had a different motivation. My motivation training in prison, I always train because I like to train, but I had to be big and jacked so people didn't fuck with me.
Yeah.
You're
kind of a shorter guy. So you got to be wider if you're not going to be taller.
Well, it's just, you got to,
you got to be strong enough to handle yourself.
Yeah,
you don't want to
handle yourself in there.
You don't want to get sick and weak.
So people don't fuck with you. Simple as that. And
just like a intimidation factor.
And if you
maybe.
do get in a fight, you could deal with it.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of times when I got in fights in prison and I won just because I was bigger and stronger than whoever.
Yeah.
So there's a different motivation. And those guys that are coming from the Middle East, I mean, they're growing up in war. Mm-hmm. So when they go to the gym, this is like war for them. They're still in that primitive. They're like in the prison where they're fighting each other. They're fighting other people. Their whole motivation is completely different than someone in the United States growing up training at a 24-hour fitness where nothing's going to happen. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about Iran, but
it's a country that's consistently in war with everything around them, and even within each other, and the culture. I'm sure in the culture they're fighting amongst each other like all the time. It's just that kind of thing.
We didn't really touch on it, but I guess Chris Aceto wasn't taking too kindly to Shawn.
Yeah, so
Shawn saying that he didn't know how to train, he didn't know anything.
Chris really didn't like.
Should I pull it up?
He posted a couple things on Instagram.
All right. Let's see if this pulls up. I don't know if it'll go because there's no audio here. Hold on a second. Let me see if there's audio on this one.
I love messing with Nick.
All right. So there's Chad Nichols' son, when he was going to fight Shawn. What did Shawn say about Chad when his son was pissed off at him? I forget.
For years, Shawn has been calling Chad Nichols Dr. Death and blaming Chad Nichols for the death of many of his training clients.
I mean, he does have some wild training protocols.
Yeah, so Shawn was bashing him. and bashing coaches in general for basically putting people on dangerous.
I love messing with Nick. I love when we went.
And then there's this one where Chris Aceto posted where he was being scolded that year by
Jake Wood.
Jake Wood for basically Shawn was critiquing a bodybuilding contest, and a lot of people got mad at his critiques because basically, you know, Shawn's kind of blunt and he would say, you know, so and so looks like shit. It's so many words, you know, and some people they don't take that well. They
you know what? I don't know, Shawn. I don't know if he just likes to be a contrarian. Has he always been that way? Because you knew him when you guys were teenagers. Does he do it maybe just to get attention in the industry? Is he having like a different point of view? Is that actually his point of view? Is different than the average?
Here's Shawn. I'm going to tell you, like, here's Shawn. I've known Shawn since we were teenagers, and I competed against him. So I remember I competed against him. He was 19, I was 18 at Teen America. And the following year, he was guest posing at some show, and I walked backstage, and he was getting ready, and he just looked freaky. Mm-hmm. And I said, man, every time I've seen you, you get bigger and bigger. And he looks at me and goes, that's the idea, isn't it? He's just cocky. He's just a cocky fucker, you know?
I mean, he had the ability to be. He's one of the best, the greatest, probably one of the greatest of all times. You know, genetically, he was fantastic, and he definitely put in his time because he was very graceful on his posing. He looked full. He looked peeled. You know, he's got a lot of accolades that you can say about him for sure. But he's also a cocky cunt.
And he also just says whatever he thinks. Mm-hmm. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. He just says it. You know, so and so's missing that.
That's why everyone likes you. Everyone in the comment sections like you because you just say it how it is.
I do too, but I don't like go out of my way to like put people down,
defend people about it.
I remember I went to North Americans one year and Shawn was there, and I got off stage and I'm like, so what do you think? He's like, you got that pec tear going on.
To you?
Yeah.
He was talking shit. He was trying to Arnold Schwarzenegger you, trying to little man you.
No, that's just him. He's just like, you got the pec tear going on and this is off. He goes like, yeah, no. And he was just telling me the truth, but like, I remember as a competitor at the time being like, fucking asshole. And I mean, he was right. I wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
I was off, and
maybe he just focuses on the negatives instead of like, oh, your glutes are in, you look big.
Yeah, but he's telling the truth. Like, I don't think his critiques are on. Like, he's telling the truth, what he sees it. Just some people don't want to hear that truth.
The only thing he ever said about me was that I had a beautiful lat spread. I saw a comment he made on back when I turned pro.
He'll say what he thinks, and if he doesn't like what he sees, he'll say that. And some people have a hard time with that. There's other things where like, recently,
didn't you have a bet with him recently?
Yeah.
What was it about?
I bet with him.
Oh, that Chris was going to win.
I bet with him that, no, he said C-Bum was going to win. He said publicly that C-Bum was going to win that pro show.
Yeah.
And I said, I called him up and I said, I'll bet you $1,000 Martin Fitzwater. And then he said, okay, he'll take the bet. And then a week or two before the thing, he calls me and he's like, the bet's off. He said, C-Bum said he's not taking this seriously. I'm like, no, he's still competing. You can't call off the bet. And he's like, no, the bet's off.
What do you think he would have said if C-Bum won? What do you think he would have told you, like pay up or anything?
No, he called the bet off. And I told him, no, you can't call the bet off. We made a bet. He's still competing. You can't renege now. He's like, no, I'm not doing this.
All right.
But there was one, Breon Ansley recently went on and talked about his cycle openly online. He talked about what he was taking.
We should do a video about that. I haven't seen it. We should maybe review it and do a video about it.
Yeah. But anyways, I think Breon did it because he was basically saying look, I've achieved this level of success as a pro. I don't need to take a shit ton of drugs. This is what I'm taking. It was a reasonable dose, but it wasn't anything crazy. And I think he was just being honest. And Shawn slammed him, saying that as a pro bodybuilder, you shouldn't be out talking about this shit.
Mm-hmm. Well, Shawn, the day Shawn was from, you weren't supposed to talk about that shit. It was, I guess the laws had changed in the early 90s after Aceto got brain cancer. I think that was right around when the laws changed. And you really were, I feel like you guys were really afraid to talk about it. And then also, Weeder said, if you didn't say I got shredded from hydroxy cut, that you weren't going to have a contract no more. So I think Shawn just came from a different era.
Well, back in those days, like everybody had a contract with either Weeder or Muscular Development or whatever supplement company, and they had to promote that supplement brand as, what they were doing. And
you remember Hydroxycut had everyone? They had like Branch, Jay, Phil.
What was the name of that company?
The product was I think the brand name was Hydroxycut.
Yeah,
not VPX.
No, it was they made that creatine product full of sugar.
Oh, NO Explode? No, that was BSN. That was later.
I can't think of it right now. But anyways, people were under these contracts with these supplement companies and with magazines. And if you came out and talked about your steroid cycle, you run the risk of losing your contract. Mm-hmm. So at that point in time, they really couldn't talk about it because they would just be blackballed and lose their contract. But now, and I remember there was even somebody back, I want to say it was 90s, early 2000s. They interviewed pros, but they disguised their voices and they blurred their images.
Yeah, what's his name? Tom.
We were guessing at who was talking, but
we kind of can know now.
But they blurred their images and disguised their voices because no one wanted to be on camera admitting to taking anything.
Yeah.
But things have changed nowadays. I mean, people are out.
The culture has changed for sure.
And now it's gone to complete opposite direction where you have these schmucks talking about
taking more.
Take 10 grams of shit and 20 units of growth hormone and all this stuff like this. Mm-hmm. So I think what Breon was doing was saying, hey, you don't have to take 10 grams of stuff and 20 units. And Shawn slammed him for doing it.
Yeah.
And I disagree with that. Because these guys can say what they want. They're not going to lose a contract. Most of them don't even have a contract.
Yeah.
If they do, it's not paying for shit. It's paying for their supplements.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't think companies nowadays really are I don't think they really care anymore because it's really not.
Well, because it's more out in the open. Everybody knows. Yeah. It's like the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah. I talk really openly about what I use, but I'm also honest about hey, I got here, I started taking gear 16, 17 years ago. And I went for a long time when the highest I took was 700-800 milligrams, for years, for a decade, I didn't go above probably 1,200. I would do 600 tests and, 350.
Which is probably why you got to the level that you got to, because if you did more, you'd have just burned yourself out.
I mean, I think that I probably would be as big, but I think I might have some kidney issues, some liver issues.
You would have burned yourself out.
Yeah.
You would have burned out your receptors. You would have burned out. You'd just be.
Yeah, health would be compromised. Yeah. For anyone that cares right now, I've been off cycle since November, and you don't got to be on all the time. I'm definitely smaller. I'm holding 250 right now, but I'm feeling great. My dick still works. And, I kind of came off because I like to go on about 7, 8, 9 months. And as long as if I'm putting on mass and as long as stuff's I'd get my blood labs and as long as stuff looks good, I'll keep going. And if I hit a wall where I go a month and I'm the same size as I was the previous month, then it's time to take a break. That's kind of how I go about it. I don't do an arbitrary 16 weeks, 18, 14, whatever. I don't go with specific weeks. I just say, am I growing or am I not growing?
Well, a lot of people, they don't have they're psychologically addicted to taking stuff. So
Yeah.
they don't ever want to go off.
I'm actually happy to be off. It's like, it's kind of intense, you know, you're in this kind of heightened state mentally, you know, all you think about is like, oh, that I got to get 10 ounces in my next meal. Like, you know, you're kind of like, it's kind of nice to just take a mental break from bodybuilding and just eat. Sometimes I eat once or twice a day and I just comfortably eat what, you know, if I want a cheeseburger for dinner, I just have that. And I'm not trying to stuff and overeat, and I'm not, you know, it's kind of nice to take your foot. I think I've seen Dorian talking about it for years. He had to like really reprogram his brain to stop just thinking about, you know, this is 100 grams of chicken, this is 100 grams of sweet potato, whatever. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't mean to make it like a lecture or rant, but yeah, I understand where Breon's thought is, because a lot of these guys look up to Breon. They want to do what he's doing, and he's telling them, hey, this is what I'm doing. I got up to this after working out for 15, 20 years. I didn't start at this. You know, a lot of these guys are starting at 1,000 milligrams instead of.
I think like all added up, his whole cycle prior to the Olympia was like 1,300 milligrams, like everything combined.
Yeah. Which that's a pro heavy dose. Like that's not a heavy dose, but that's a.
He worked up to that. He wasn't that the whole time. He said at the beginning of the prep, I was only taking these, and then I added in this.
Yeah, we should. I haven't seen that video, but we should do a review on it and kind of do it. I think it'd be fun content.
You know, Shawn slamming him for
talking about
it. I disagree with that.
I mean, if nobody talked about it, it would be just like it was back in the 80s and 90s when you guys just went word of mouth. Oh, did you hear? I heard Dorian's doing a bottle of, you know, whatever, instead of saying, oh, like, no, these guys are doing, this is what specifically they're actually doing as pros.
I don't know if it's better or worse, because
I think people are going to do it anyways, and I think
I don't say people aren't going to do it.
The more knowledge they have.
But the problem we have nowadays with social media is, you have people putting out some real
content,
real stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I try to tell the truth. But then you have these people that, you know, they're just trying to be the next Boston Lloyd and sensationalize everything.
Yeah.
And
well, I think that there needs to be more guys like you and Breon and me talking about more sensible stuff. And then I don't know if you watch like Kurt Havens. He kind of talks about, you know, he's an endocrinologist, so he like really knows. You should get him on. But I think that knowledge is really useful, because I mean, if not, then maybe they're going off of just Boston Lloyd's bad knowledge, you know, and over excessive doses.
What I have a problem with is, this is a little off subject, but Boston preached a certain thing.
He did something different than what he said.
No, that he did what he said.
He took what he said, but he told people to take lower.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm saying. So he took crazy dosages. He really did do that. And he really did kill himself. Mm-hmm. And we really all know that, especially those of us who know him personally. So for someone to come riding on his coattails and preaching the same shit is irresponsible. Mm-hmm. To say, okay, we know Boston took this stuff. I know he was telling the truth because I talked to him every day on the phone.
Yeah.
I know he was not lying to me. And I know he really fried his kidneys and he really did kill himself very young. There's no doubt that he did that. So why would anybody want to repeat that?
Yeah.
Obviously failed experiment.
Yeah.
Like, to me, I looked at that and I'm like, okay.
Use it as like a warning sign that you can die if you push too hard. You can
kill yourself with this. So then for these other people to come along and be like, they're just basically trying to I've actually, I remember I was speaking to a Masters competitor. This was about 10 years ago when I was still competing. And he had switched coaches from whoever he was using to one of these other coaches. And he specifically said he switched coaches because he wanted someone that would push the drugs harder, and his previous coach wouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. So he chose a coach that would go higher on the drugs.
Yeah.
And now that guy is like Mr. Christian, I don't take drugs, anti-steroids, this, that, and the other. But I remember when he was the wild man wanting to do that.
I think sometimes what happens is those guys are wild men, and then they see the fucking dark side, and they go, "Oh, maybe I did fuck up." And then they go the other direction. They would say,
I think that's
"Nobody should use anything. I'm terrified of fucking gear."
That's what happened to him. He had a bunch of health issues.
Yeah.
He went crazy with the high dosages and shit.
Yeah.
Taking 100 units of Lantus a day.
Jesus.
Yeah, and all this other stuff, and he got really huge and everything, but then he had health problems.
Yeah.
And that's when he shut it down completely and went completely the other direction.
Yeah.
You know, but he had to like go through that himself to see it.
That guy, Cali Muscle did that too, but he always lied. He always said he was natty.
Well, Cali Muscle is a cartoon character. Right?
He's not even a real person. He's just an imaginary cartoon character.
I'm just saying that he's not, like, you can't believe anything that guy says.
Yeah, that's true. He was just like the example that I thought of when you said that.
No, this guy actually was Mike Christian. He was a really good Masters pro. He turned pro as a Masters. He was big as shit, and especially for his age. But he openly admits that he abused his body with the drugs.
Yeah.
But I remember before that, when he was competing, he told me personally he switched from this coach to a different coach because he wanted to push the drugs harder. That was his reason for doing it.
I think that's the problem. Is a lot of these guys think that was Boston. What he said, Boston thought that every guy was lying. No guy uses under 4 or 5 grams. You know, and he thought that he could get there if he pushed that, and he did, and he didn't have the genetics to push. He didn't have the genetics to be that muscle. He didn't have the genetics to have the muscle of.
Well, he also didn't train hard at all, ever.
I never saw him train, so I don't know.
I did. He trained like it was. Even his mom makes jokes about his training. The guy never trained hard. So.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, all right, we're coming up on a little over an hour. You got anything else?
No, I think that pretty much covers it for this subject. Just to wrap it up, in my opinion, I think a coach is on any level, whether you're brand new or intermediate, national, or a top pro in the world, having the right person, and I want to say the right person, someone who's knowledgeable and has experience, can guide you in the right direction, can make a huge benefit and can save you years and years of trial and error and possibly messing up your health by doing things the right way versus, trying to do like I did and figuring out yourself. I can honestly say I spent 20 years spinning my wheels trying to figure out how the peaking process works. And I did figure it out, but I did a lot of contests that I probably could have done a lot better at, maybe one. Had I not, I can guarantee you, when I came into that Excalibur at 225, if I came in nationals 3 months earlier looking like that, I would have been in contention for winning that nationals. But I didn't
know.
I didn't know.
And maybe a coach would have if you had the right one.
And if I had the right one, I probably would have never dieted down to 196 and done that whole thing.
If you had the wrong coach, you might have done it worse though, like when you were with Nasser. So that's just the experience.
I went with Nasser, and he destroyed me. He took me from 235, ready to go on stage, down to a light heavyweight, emaciated, and I had to go get 6 bags of IVs right after prejudging.
Oh man! All right, you want to wrap it?
Yeah. So this is Larry Pollock, Blue Carrier, come from Underground Performance Gym. Don't forget to go on our website. We have some specials running now on HD Muscle and Chemix products, and we've got some new the Kratom products that are on sale there as well. Also, we have some deals right now on memberships, 0 enrollment for the new year, and that's a wrap.
This is the best gym in Ventura. All right, guys, that's a wrap.
I believe that the fires were cast upon, on the flames we shall become. I believe in a common calling, where our temples pray as one.